The softness revolution. Why letting go is the most radical thing you'll ever do. You know what nobody tells you about transformation. It doesn't arrive with a soundtrack. There's no montage, no perfectly curated Instagram post with a sunset and a caption about releasing what no longer serves you. Real transformation, it's messy, uncomfortable, and most of the time it looks a whole lot like failure before it even begins to resemble freedom. I recently sat down with Kiamesha Torres, a visionary who is quietly dismantling every tired narrative about what it means to thrive as a Black woman in spaces that were never designed for our softness, our rest, or our joy. Kiamesha is doing something that feels almost subversive in its simplicity. She's building communities where Black women can finally exhale, pivot without apology, and reclaim their power without needing permission from anyone. Her work isn't just important, it's a lifeline for those of us who've been running on fumes for so long we forgot what it feels like to be full. And what she shared with me, it fundamentally shifted everything I thought I understood about strength, vulnerability, and what it actually takes to build a life you don't need to escape from. So let's talk about the thing we avoid talking about: letting go. Not the sanitized, socially acceptable version of letting go. I'm talking about the real, raw, terrifying act of releasing the version of yourself that everyone has come to expect. The one who says yes when she means no, the one who shows up even when she's completely empty, the one who wears the cape so convincingly that people forget there's a human being underneath it, gasping for air. Here's the truth: most of us won't admit out loud. We're walking around carrying versions of ourselves that expired years ago. We're clinging to identities that were handed to us by people who didn't truly know us, by systems that never valued us, by a world that convinced us our worth was directly tied to our productivity. And we are exhausted, not just tired, soul tired, the kind of bone deep exhaustion that sleep doesn't touch, vacations don't fix, and coffee can't even pretend to solve. Kiamesha Torres understands this intimately. In our conversation, she spoke about the exact moment she realized that survival mode wasn't sustainable anymore, that the superwoman cape was literally suffocating her, and that true transformation required something most of us are absolutely terrified to do: be vulnerable, be soft, be devastatingly honest about the fact that we're not okay, and we haven't been for a very long time. Let me tell you about Jennifer Gonzalez. After 15 years in a corporate role, 15 years of arriving early and staying late, 15 years of navigating bias with a smile, swallowing microaggressions like vitamins, and proving herself over and over and over again, Jennifer was laid off just like that. It was over. She was devastated, but not just because she lost her job. She was devastated because she'd lost her identity. She had spent so long being the strong one, the dependable one, the one who never complained, that she genuinely didn't know who she was without that role. For months, Jennifer struggled. She applied for jobs that never called back. She questioned her worth with every rejection email. She internalized every silence as confirmation that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as valuable as she believed. And then something shifted. She joined a peer led support network designed specifically for Black women, a space where vulnerability wasn't treated like weakness, a space where she could say out loud, I'm scared. I don't know what's next. I need help. And instead of judgment, she found community. Instead of isolation, she found accountability. Instead of silence, she found voices that said, me too. Let's figure this out together. Within 6 months, Jennifer launched her own consulting business. She doubled her previous salary. She started mentoring other women through similar transitions. But here's the thing that matters most: the business wasn't the transformation. The transformation was Jennifer giving herself permission to let go of the version of herself that believed she had to do it all alone. The transformation was her realizing that asking for help wasn't a sign of failure. It was a strategy for survival. It was wisdom. And that's the first thing I want you to hold on to from this conversation with Kiamesha Torres. Embracing vulnerability and letting go of outdated versions of yourself is one of the most powerful acts of self love and growth you will ever experience. True transformation happens when you stop living by other people's definitions and expectations and instead make peace with releasing the parts of yourself that no longer serve your purpose. Now, let's talk about the village. Because here's what they don't tell you about being a strong Black woman: the world will applaud your strength right up until the precise moment you actually need support. Then suddenly, you're too much, too needy, too emotional, too complicated. And so we learn to suffer in silence. We learn to carry everything ourselves. We learn that asking for help is a luxury we cannot afford. But Kiamesha Torres is flipping that entire script. She's building spaces where Black women don't have to choose between being strong and being supported, where rest isn't some reward you earn after exhaustion, it's a right, where softness isn't weakness, it's revolution. Let me introduce you to Lori Tucker. Lori is a visionary leader who watched what was happening to Black women during the economic crisis, the layoffs, the calculated retreat from DEI initiatives, the loss of federal jobs, and she said, enough. She created platforms and communities where Black women could exhale, pivot, and reclaim their power, not by grinding harder, not by proving themselves more, but by resting, by setting boundaries that actually hold, by building together instead of barely surviving alone. The women who joined Lori's networks reported something remarkable. They felt seen, they felt valued. They felt like they could finally stop performing strength and start actually experiencing it. And from that space of rest and radical self acceptance, they launched businesses. They set boundaries that changed their lives. They redefined what success looked like on their own terms, not on terms dictated by systems that were never designed for their flourishing. Lori's work grew directly from her own experiences with burnout. She knew intimately what it felt like to run on empty, to give until there was absolutely nothing left, to believe that survival mode was just the cost of being a Black woman in this world. But she also knew something else. Survival wasn't enough. Transformation required softness. Transformation required support. Transformation required a village that actually showed up. And that's the second thing I need you to remember. You don't have to do it alone. Building a supportive village is absolutely essential. Collective empowerment, intentional support networks, and accountability tribes are the foundation for thriving, especially for Black women who have been expected for far too long to do it all in silence, with grace, and without complaint. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Because once you let go of the old version of yourself, once you build your village, you're going to face a choice. When life inevitably knocks you down, when systems fail you yet again, when criticism mounts and doubt creeps in, you can either shrink back into survival mode or you can pivot. And pivoting, that's not giving up. That's not failure. That's strategy. That's wisdom. That's power. Let me tell you about Jenica. Jenica is a Black woman leader who spent years hiding her struggles, maintaining a perfect facade of strength, and internalizing every single criticism as proof that she wasn't enough. She was isolated, she was burned out, and she was exhausted from pretending. So she did something radical. She led in love. She shared her journey openly, vulnerabilities and all. She built what she calls accountable tribes, communities rooted in mutual support and unflinching authenticity. In her openness, it inspired a seismic shift throughout the entire Black professional community. Suddenly, vulnerability wasn't a liability, it was leadership. Suddenly, asking for help wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. Suddenly, setting boundaries wasn't selfish, it was survival. Jenica's influence redefined what leadership looks like for Black women. She proved that you can be soft and strong, you can be vulnerable and powerful, you can set boundaries and still be deeply loving. And most importantly, you can pivot in the face of adversity without losing yourself in the process. You can change direction without losing your integrity. You can start over without erasing your worth. That's the third thing I want you to carry with you from my conversation with Kiamesha Torres. Pivoting in the face of adversity is not a sign of failure. It's a strategy for redefining success on your own terms. When systems fail or criticism mounts, it's an opportunity to build something new, to set boundaries that protect your peace, and to reclaim joy, rest, and purpose as non negotiable parts of your life. So here's what I'm asking you to do. I want you to give yourself permission, real permission, not the kind you whisper under your breath and then take back the next morning. I'm talking about bold, unapologetic, life altering permission. Permission to let go of any version of yourself that no longer serves you. Permission to actively seek out a supportive community or village that can nurture your growth instead of draining your energy. Permission to set boundaries without guilt, to embrace rest as a revolutionary act, and to redefine your value from the inside out, not based on what you produce or how much you can endure. Because here's the truth that nobody wants to say out loud: the world needs you, but it doesn't need the exhausted, burned out, running on fumes version of you. It needs the version of you that's rested, that's grounded, that's soft and strong and unapologetically whole. That's the version of you that will change everything. Kiamesha Torres is creating spaces where that version of you can thrive, where Black women can unlearn survival, rediscover softness, and reclaim the joy, rest, and freedom they deserve, and without guilt, without apology, and without explanation. And if you take nothing else from this talk, take this: you are not alone. You were never meant to carry it all by yourself. And the moment you give yourself permission to let go, to build your village, and to pivot with purpose, that's the moment everything changes. So I'm going to leave you with a challenge. Not tomorrow, not next week, right now. Identify one version of yourself that you've been clinging to out of obligation, out of fear, or out of the belief that you owe it to someone else to stay small. Write it down, say it out loud, and then let it go. Release it with intention. Mourn it if you need to, but let it go. Then reach out to one person who makes you feel seen, supported, and safe. Tell them you're building your village. Ask them to walk with you. Be vulnerable enough to admit you can't do this alone, because you can't. And you were never supposed to. And finally, make one decision today that prioritizes your rest, your joy, or your peace over productivity, performance, or proving yourself to people who will never be satisfied anyway. Just one decision. That's all it takes to begin, because survival mode is over. Your soft girl era, it's already begun, and the world is waiting for the version of you that's rested, restored, and ready to rewrite every rule that was never written for your liberation in the first place. So let go. Build your village, pivot with power, and watch what happens when you finally choose yourself. Not out of burnout, but out of reverence, because you deserve softness. You deserve rest. You deserve a life that feels as good as it looks, and it starts right now.